good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to episode 33 of Inside the Wrongful Conviction of Daniel Holtzclaw. And today we're going to finish up with Bates' wrap up of his episode 16, I think it is. His wrap up or thoughts and opinions or what he knows from uh, his experience investigating the case uh, of the Carla Raines case. So that's what we're going to do today. I know that the intro said that it was trial transcripts, and it's not trial transcripts. So obviously, but we will start with transcripts next week. I know this is an early time, an abnormal time, and I'm just trying to figure out how life is chaotic, right? For most of us, and I'm just really struggling to try to figure out the best time to do my to do these lives. I think this works well for my panel and this earlier time, and it's going to work better for me than the afternoons. Hopefully it will work out for all of you as well. And if it doesn't, please make sure you watch it on replay. Yes, Muffin, I'm early today. I'm trying to figure out a scheduling and stuff. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So what we're going to do today, we're going to start off with the wrap up of Bates episode 16 of the Carla Raines um, case. But first I want to say hello to the panel, Kay and Susan. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing all right. Just been working outside today. It's a beautiful day in Oklahoma.
Oh, good. Good, good, good. How's your weather, Susan?
It's gorgeous. Just
Good.
perfect. After
It's,
the 95 plus degrees I just spent last week at a
Yeah,
music
in a
festival.
yes.
tent.
In a tent, yes.
Yeah, with no air conditioning or fans, I'm sure. That's
I had a fan. Didn't
oh
help
good.
much.
Oh. But you had a great time, right?
Oh, God, yeah. Fantastic.
That's
Despite the
got to be the
weather.
question.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, Susan, for those who are listening or maybe listening, what is it that you do this every year in September? What is it? Where is it that you go, and what is it that you do?
It's in Winfield, Kansas, and it is the Flat Picking Championship uh, International, I believe. It's a music festival.
Music festival. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's how my brain works. Just music festival is what I need to hear. So, and I know you guys have great music that you listen to. It's all live from the folks that
Oh, yeah. Right
big
in
event,
camp.
right? Lots and lots of people.
Yeah, about 10,000.
Well, I mean, okay, I should have. I guess in your particular, because you're with kind of a group, right?
Yeah, we just had
Okay,
about, 50 this year, I think.
yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you were able to go do that and enjoy the end of your summer. So, weather is weird here. Temperatures are up and down, cool or sometimes even cold at night. High pollen, but kind of warm during the day, hazy. We've got a lot of smoke and stuff from fires that are around us. But other than that, I mean, through the sun, I mean, through the clouds and the haze, it's a beautiful sunny day. So,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not,
and Susan's or Missouri likely executed an innocent man a couple
yeah,
days ago.
yeah,
That sucks.
yeah,
They sure
Wow,
did.
that is
Yesterday.
yeah.
sickening, man.
Unreal.
That, uh,
Unreal. And
that's,
I think it's the second one this year. I think they did one in January, February as well.
yeah. And if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, speaking of wrongful convictions and wrongful executions, the wrongful executions are just the most horrific thing, I mean, honestly, it's the reason I cannot support the death penalty, the main reason I cannot support the death penalty. Um, because we
Even
all
the
know the whole,
original prosecutor did not want him executed, believed he
yes.
was innocent. It's
And
unreal.
how long ago did you, I mean, how long ago, I think you know a little bit more about it than I do, Susan. How long ago was this man arrested and incarcerated, wrongfully convicted?
Oh gosh, Rhonda,
I think it was 98, if I'm remembering correctly.
yeah, I know it was over 20 years, 25 years, yeah, 24 years, something like that.
Right, and I did remember reading that the prosecutor was like, no, 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 he didn't get a fair trial, and we can't execute this man. And
And his
you know,
DNA wasn't on the murder weapon, and
right,
and.
and yeah, yeah, it's you know, and when you've got a prosecutor, the original prosecutor saying,
Fighting for
no,
him,
this,
yeah.
yeah, fighting for this man's life, but it's oh, I just have chills just thinking about it. It's just unreal, that this happens still. Um, I feel like, I mean, I know there's a lot of executions in Texas and Arkansas and, you know, some of the other states that are, or Alabama, some of the other states that, you know, have high wrongful convictions, but it seems like Missouri and Oklahoma seem to have. I looked up the stats on it probably a year or so ago, but I feel like Missouri and Oklahoma are two of the higher, definitely within the top five, possibly, for wrongful convictions. And for
Yeah,
Oklahoma and Missouri, both also wrongful executions. So,
I think Alabama's up there too, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I think I'm mixing up Alabama and Arkansas. I think it's Alabama.
Maybe.
You're right.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
the governor, refused to do anything about it, and then they went to the Supreme Court SCOTUS, and nope.
Three of the justices were willing to look at it, but not the others. So
Yeah,
Just, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
I guess we have the United States Supreme Court. Um, well,
Death Squad.
never mind.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I know where you're going. That, you know, I believe six of the justices are um, Republican, I guess, and you know, Republicans believe in the death penalty, support it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I used to be okay with the death penalty too, but it can just go away now when we're executing, and I'm sure we always have been executing innocent people.
yeah,
But until you know, you don't know.
right.
So
Well, and until it becomes a part of your something that you do, like all of us, you know, we're advocates for those who are wrongfully convicted for sure. And so until I got involved with Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, I didn't ever really, I just didn't think wrongful convictions, I don't think I'd ever even heard of it until Stephen and Brendan's cases. And I, my mind is continuously boggled by the amount of wrongful convictions in this country. Um, and yeah, I'm sure you're right, Kay. They've always been happening, but because it wasn't something we focused on or thought about or whatever the case is. You know, we just don't, like you said, if you don't know, you don't know. And so that's part of what this channel is about, and partly, well, the main reason is because, you know, my passion for Daniel's case and his innocence. You know, I feel like he deserved this. He needed this. You know, this one space that's a regular, for the most part, regular place where people can come to get whether it's more information or to debate his guilt or innocence or to learn about the case completely from a new, Daniel's case needs this. And, I know it doesn't reach a wide audience, but, hopefully every week somebody new, comes in and pays attention to it. So, hi, Muffin, and hello, Under Your Scars. Yes, DNA is a must. But the case we're talking about, Under Your Scars, is the man in Missouri who was murdered yesterday by the state of Missouri. And there was DNA in his case that was not his, was conclusively decided was not his DNA, yet they murdered him yesterday anyway. So anyway, it's awful. But so what we're going to do is I'm going to start this video and I'm going to in the meantime see if I can reach Cherie. I believe she's working from home today, and see if we can get her on the panel. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started.
The following episode contains investigative events which occurred August 15th, 2014.
Welcome back to Bates Investigates, Season 1, In Defense of Daniel Holtzclaw. This is Episode 16. In the last episode, I covered Part 1 of accuser Carla Raines' allegations against then Oklahoma City Police Patrol Officer Daniel Holtzclaw. The majority of last episode was the audio from an interview recorded by Oklahoma City sex crimes detective Rocky Gregory and 41-year-old Northeast Oklahoma City resident Carla Raines. That interview took place on August 15th of 2014 and at Raines' mother's house in the 1300 block of Northeast 18th Street. That interview is only about 27 minutes long, but I would argue it's one of the most important interviews in this entire investigation, only second to Daniel Holtzclaw's interrogation interview. Why? Because to me, as someone who personally investigated this case, this interview answered so many questions about what was really going on. Both with Daniel Holtzclaw as a patrol officer prior to these allegations, and with the detectives investigating this case and how their investigative techniques manipulated the facts, the accusers, and allowed Holtzclaw to be falsely prosecuted and eventually convicted. But before I get into all of that, I want to first wrap up what Carla Raines' allegations actually are. Raines stated that at some point in the last year she was walking alone along Northeast 16th Street just west of North Fons Hill Avenue. She thought the time was around 10 p.m. She said that as she was walking, a newer model Oklahoma City patrol car passed her and then made a U-turn, pulled up to her, and stopped. The officer, who she stated she had never encountered previously and was later identified as Daniel Holtzclaw, exited his vehicle and began asking Raines the typical questions. Her name, where she was headed, where she was coming from, did she have any drugs on her, etc. Holtzclaw then reportedly did a quick pat search upon her before stating, quote, "I have to check you," end quote. Raines claims that at this point Holtzclaw made a motion for her to pull up her shirt. She told Detective Gregory that even though Holtzclaw didn't directly order her to do so, after she lifted her shirt, he allegedly twice told her, quote, "I need to make sure nothing is on you," end quote. Raines said she knew what that meant. She needed to lift her shirt up and her bra too, thus exposing her breasts. She stated that the officer ran her name and that she came back clear for any outstanding warrants. Raines said that she simply wanted the stop to be over with as quickly as possible because she didn't want to be seen talking to a police officer and labeled a snitch. Before walking away, Raines said that Holtzclaw made another comment that, quote, "I go around and stop girls and people to make sure they are okay," end quote. Raines was clear. Officer Daniel Holtzclaw never touched her, never said anything blatantly inappropriate to her, and didn't actually ever specifically instruct her to expose herself. But that's not the biggest takeaway in this interview. It goes way deeper than that, and I'll begin to dissect the importance with my thoughts on what happened during her and Holtzclaw's encounter. For starters, regardless of Raines's memory, this wasn't the first time Holtzclaw had stopped her. Records show that they had run into each other on at least one previous occasion, July 10th, 2013, at about 6:15 p.m. I don't have any additional information regarding that stop, other than Holtzclaw ran Raines for warrants. It was determined by Detective Rocky Gregory that the date of the stop, in which Raines claims she exposed herself, took place on March 14th, 2014, and at around 11:20 at night. It was about 58 degrees that night, and she says she was wearing tight shorts, a t-shirt, a bra, and a jacket. She's on Northeast 16th Street in a high prostitution and drug area, and it is about a third of a mile from her mother's home, where she was living. Holtzclaw is in his patrol car. As he drives past Raines, he is suspicious that she is flagging cars. That's code word for a street prostitute who is trying to get a potential customer to stop and pick her up. According to Officer Holtzclaw's patrol car GPS, he was out at Northeast 16th and Fawns Hill for approximately 10 minutes, from 11:18 p.m. until 11:28 p.m. He pulls up, stops, gets out of his patrol car, and goes through the usual routine when encountering someone on the street. Name, date of birth, what are you up to? At 11:20 p.m., Officer Holtzclaw calls into dispatch and advises them to stand by.
Friday, March 14, 2014,
Charlie 45, stand by.
23:20 and 49 seconds.
According to Raines, Holtzclaw has her expose her breasts prior to him actually running her for warrants. That means it would have had to have happened in the first 5 minutes or less from when he pulled up and stopped. In fact, it probably would have had to have happened between the time Officer Holtzclaw told dispatch to stand by and when he actually provided her name for the warrant search. 3 minutes later, at 11:23 p.m., Officer Holtzclaw relays Carla Raines' information to check her for warrants.
Charlie 45, go ahead. Charlie 45.
23 and 40 seconds.
I got one to run. Last name is Raines. Raines, correction, Raines. Robert Adam, Ida Nora, Edward Sam. First name is Carla. Charles Adam, Robert Lincoln Adam. Date of birth is 69, black female.
Friday, March 14,
2014,
23, 24
Robert
and
Adam,
0
Ida
seconds.
Nora, Edward Sam.
Yeah, bye.
At approximately 11:27 p.m., dispatch comes back with the results of the warrant check.
Charlie 45, clear.
Simple.
After Raines comes back clear for warrants, Holtzclaw releases her from investigative detention, and according to his patrol car GPS, he leaves the scene and is moving again literally 60 seconds after talking to dispatch. So, what is Raines' actual allegation during those critical 3 minutes? She claims that after his initial questions, he turned all of his attention to whether or not she had any drugs on her. Raines says that she took it upon herself to raise her shirt and bra to the extent that her breasts became exposed. She claims she knew, or felt that she knew, that that is what Holtzclaw wanted her to do. When no drugs were found and she had no warrants, Holtzclaw released her from investigative detention to go on about her way as he continued his patrol shift. Now, to put this in perspective, Carla Raines' allegation of exposing herself without being actually told to expose herself will eventually result in a criminal charge that carries up to 10 years in prison and fines up to $20,000. But these allegations and the subsequent interview with Detective Rocky Gregory is actually much more than the he said, she said that many people think it is. As I mentioned earlier, this recorded interview answered critical nagging questions that I had when I first started investigating this case. Like, why are so many of these accusers all alleging they were made to expose themselves? How is it that detectives Rocky Gregory and Kim Davis seem to almost magically and effortlessly find accusers that otherwise had not come forward on their own? And how concerned should the public be that both detectives seem to randomly choose when they will record an interview and when they won't? And just how complete and unbiased are the resulting investigative reports? So let's now analyze Oklahoma sex crimes detective Rocky Gregory's role in accuser Carla Raines' interview. What is initially so troubling to me is when you compare his written report to the audio recording. The first glaring difference is that Gregory writes his report in a way to make it appear as if the recorded interview at Raines' mother's house is the first time they've actually ever spoken, when in fact, the audio recording makes it obvious that not only has Detective Gregory previously interviewed Raines, but that during that interview he seemed frustrated that he couldn't get Raines to tell him what he wanted to hear. Listen to it again.
Well, I didn't think I was kind of being clear about what I was asking. That's the reason I wanted to meet you face to face.
Yeah, because I ain't, like I said, I cleaned my life up, so I haven't been out on those streets. I haven't had this.
That's not at all how Detective Gregory's report reads. I've posted a copy of the official investigative report on this episode's homepage at holtzclawtrial.com. The following is straight from that report. Quote, on 8/15/14, I met Carla at her residence at Northeast 18th. I had been trying to contact Carla through phone calls and by going by her residence leaving my card. End quote. There is no mention that he had asked her questions and that he wasn't getting the answers he wanted, and therefore that's why he decided to visit with her in person. The second, and in my opinion even more egregious discrepancy, is the fact that nowhere in Detective Gregory's official report does it ever mention that Raines denied being the victim of Daniel Holtzclaw or any other Oklahoma City police officer. And it's not like she only denied it once. She denies being a victim no less than 7 times. Listen again to a string of several denials in the opening minutes of her recorded interview.
Have you ever come to any contact where an officer has been inappropriate?
No.
Have you ever had to expose yourself to them?
No.
Okay.
But, 'cause I don't be on the streets no more. I don't do drugs and all that kind of stuff. See, I don't.
But you wasn't asked to, if you had any drugs on you, anything like that, and you had to
expose myself? Mm-hmm. I mean, an officer, was it this year? No. I haven't had. How did you get my name anyway on something like this?
These 2 examples alone prove that not only should every interview with an accuser or alleged victim be recorded, but that when those interviews are not recorded, we absolutely cannot trust the written accounts of the detectives in charge of this investigation. In fact, we can't even trust the written reports when the interview is recorded. Keep in mind, it's these written reports that are reviewed by the higher-ups within the police department and prosecutors within the district attorney's office. They often don't even listen to the recordings, if one is even made available until right before trial, if ever at all. Why? Because there is a certain level of professionalism, trust, and fairness that is expected of those conducting these types of investigations. Investigations that literally leave defendants fighting for their freedom. These 2 examples I just gave you prove that Detective Rocky Gregory cannot be trusted with such a high degree of transparency, fairness, and ethics. And what's more troubling is that since this trial, Detective Gregory has been promoted to the homicide unit, where the stakes are even higher. His bias and lack of transparency can literally cost an innocent defendant their life. You'll recall in accuser Terry Morris's allegations, Detective Gregory made claims in his report that were not to be found anywhere in his recorded interviews with Morris. The same can be said about specifics contained in Detective Kim Davis's official investigative reports that don't match the recorded interviews. But I want to come back to this case and what this recording tells us about what Patrol Officer Daniel Holtzclaw is doing and not doing while out on patrol. Up to this point, we are 7 accusers in, or just over half of the 13 that will eventually lead to criminal charges. Of these 7, the allegations range greatly, from burglary, the alleged unauthorized entry into Tabitha Barnes's home, to groping or oral and/or vaginal sex. But the most common allegation amongst all 7 accusers is the assertion that Officer Holtzclaw illegally forced them to expose themselves. Specifically, accusers Janie Liggins, Terry Morris, Tabitha Barnes, and Carla Raines, with accusers Sherry Ellis, Florine Mathis, and Carla Johnson all alleging their breasts were touched to some degree, all under the guise of searching for drugs or illegal contraband. I do think Officer Holtzclaw was searching these women's breast area for those items, because it's a common hiding place. But as I've mentioned previously in other episodes, I think he was doing it as he's been instructed by higher-ranking officers and members of the gang unit, a unit he served on as a very new Oklahoma City police officer. And, as I've said before, that search technique has a name. Detective Gregory alluded to the name back in episode 2 during Officer Holtzclaw's interrogation regarding the Janie Liggins stop. He refers to it as the Shake. Have a listen.
Run down through on your search of her breasts again. You searched her with her, where was her, was she facing you or facing away?
Facing away.
She's facing away.
Right.
And how are you seeing if anything's falling, if she's facing away?
If it'd fall, I'd see right there.
You'd see right there, but don't you usually have them turn face towards you and do a shakeout?
Officer safety, always have everyone face away from me.
Did you tell her how far to raise her shirt or to do the shake with the bra?
However, in Raines' interview, he actually calls it by its formal name, the clasp and shake. That unfortunate and unimaginable request by an Oklahoma City police officer to have a female clasp her bra from on top of her shirt, pull it away from her breasts, and shake, all with the intent to dislodge anything hidden underneath the breast tissue. But this term has so far only been coined in this investigation by Detective Rocky Gregory, meaning he knows about this procedure. He knows that even though it doesn't appear in any official police policy manual, it's commonly taught to officers, and he knows it has a name, the clasp and shake.
Did you have your breasts exposed?
Yeah, you have to. You have to. You have to raise your shirt up, take the inside of your bra and raise it up, and so he said make sure ain't nothing.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but
I know what you're talking about.
That's the clasp and shake.
I firmly believe that's what Officer Holtzclaw was doing while on patrol when he encountered individuals that he knew or highly suspected were drug addicts and most likely had drugs or drug paraphernalia on them. In fact, even Carla Raines initially dismisses this as, quote, the routine.
Okay.
In my bra.
So you raise your shirt.
Raise my shirt
What's
up
the
right
next
here.
thing he asks?
Nothing. So I had to raise my shirt up right here because I know the routine.
It's only after denying being a victim of any officer 7 times and then being told by Detective Gregory that he's seeking a really bad guy and that there's lots of victims does Raines start to come around. Here's how Detective Gregory described that revelation with Carla Raines during an interview with conservative commentator, author, and investigative reporter Michelle Mulkin after Officer Holtzclaw's trial.
Can you tell me about your interaction, Detective Gregory, with Carla Raines? And how she came about? Was it very similar that you had sort of searched her out as well and found her that way?
I tried to make phone calls just like we did with any women on this massive list.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I finally made contact with her by phone. I think she returned a call, like she was staying at her grandmother's house. And I asked if I could speak with her. I went over there. She was in front of her grandmother, and I just simply asked her, I'm like, hey, I'm investigating a situation. Have you ever been had any issues with any officers? And in the beginning, she said no, but her grandma was there. And then there at the end, she's like, hey, hang on a second. Can we talk privately? I'm like, sure. So we step over to the side, and she's like, well, there was one incident. And then she goes into that she was stopped, and she had to expose her breast to an officer. And she tried to describe as best she could. And then I verified, it was Daniel. And that's kind of how it went. She did say no in the beginning, but it was because she didn't want her grandma to hear it. And we
Did she tell you that?
I spoke with her a couple times. I know that she kind of alluded. I just knew that that's what the reason was when she said she wanted to speak in private.
So she had basically denied several times that she was a victim. You're saying it's because she didn't want her grandma to know?
Yes.
And you're assuming that, or she told you that?
Well, I just in speaking with her, I did gather that because she wanted to speak in private. At the time, I could tell she was really nervous. She's had a past history, getting stopped by the police. She had that normal history with officers. She had that normal past history of, drugs and everything else like we've been seeing. And I kind of gained rapport with her. And I think she felt more comfortable that's why she took me aside. And we spoke alone, and she told me what happened.
I can't remember. What was the outcome on the verdict of those charges?
They did not. That was not guilty on her.
So you believed her, but the jury didn't?
Yes. Why
do you think that is?
Just, I think it probably went back to the no. She's saying no. They didn't have the interaction like I did with her. I know what happened during that time. I could tell it was an audio recording, is what I had. So they didn't really get to see her actions and how it was. And we interview people all the time, so we can kind of tell by body language and how they're acting and things. I believed her just by how she was just going through the process. Mm-hmm. She didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She's actually the one that came out and told me, it's like, well, the reason I didn't tell is because whenever you speak with the police, you're kind of labeled as, a snitch. Said it's not repercussion from other officers ratting on another officer, it's repercussion on the streets. Mm-hmm. Because now everybody starts looking at you, you're talking with the police.
So there is a culture in...
Did you catch that spin? And once again, he is completely deviating from what is crystal clear in his recorded interview with accuser Carla Raines. Detective Gregory claims that Raines only initially and 7 times denied being a victim because her mother, whom he wrongly keeps identifying as her grandmother, was within earshot during that part of their interview, and she didn't want to talk about it around her. Let's hear what she actually said again so we can put it into context.
Well, this is the deal. We've got several victims.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so we're trying to go back on this guy. And he's a pretty bad guy.
Was he addressing himself as an officer or?
You got
prostitution?
cops in Oklahoma.
Do what?
Oklahoma. All these white folks is crazy. No good.
As far as, because I haven't really been on the streets and stuff that much. So, but I mean, I know what you're talking about. I just couldn't really talk in front of her, but I know what you're talking about as far as, but I haven't, what you mean, expose himself as far as like asking for prostitution or?
Not even necessarily for prostitutes, but he's having women do different things.
Oh, thinking they gonna go to jail if they do a favor for him, he wouldn't.
There you go.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. But then the past year, I really can't really recall.
It should be very clear. Detective Gregory is lying. Or at the very least, his bias against Officer Daniel Holtzclaw is so strong he can no longer be objective about any aspect of this investigation. Raines wasn't afraid to speak in front of her mother. If that was truly the case, then what's his excuse for why she didn't tell him more details when they talked privately on the phone? It's very obvious to me in this recorded interview that Raines is simply trying to figure out what the hell Detective Gregory is talking about. It's only after Detective Gregory spoon feeds her enough details that she simply regurgitates what she thinks he wants to hear. And to be quite honest, I think much of what she says is actually true to some extent. She was stopped by Officer Holtzclaw. She was run for warrants, and he did what she considers to be routine. He had her do the clasp and shake.
So you raise your shirt
right here
to
right
just above the breast.
Right above my breast, and I had to take my bra because my breast fell out.
Do I think some of these women lifted their shirts higher than necessary? Yes. Do I think some of these women's breasts fell below their shirt line once they were no longer being supported by their bra? Yes. Do I think any of that was done with malicious, illegal, or sexually gratifying intent? 100% no. It's obvious when you listen to Raines' interview that even she didn't think it was anything out of the ordinary until Detective Gregory made her feel that it was. Again, Carla Raines.
So I had to raise my shirt up, raise my bra up, and shake it out. And he talked to me about 45 minutes, and then he let me go.
If you go back through her interview, she must recount doing the clasp and shake at least 4 or 5 times. And she waffles back and forth between being told to expose herself to ultimately admitting she just quote-unquote knew that's what she needed to do. She also claims this entire interaction took 45 minutes. In reality, we know from patrol car GPS it was only 10 minutes or possibly slightly less than that. One last thing, did you catch it? Before Raines realized she needed to focus in on when Daniel Holtzclaw stopped her, she did implicate a different officer for wrongdoing. But Detective Gregory steered her away from that. And just like accuser Sherry Ellis, Carla Raines implicated a black Oklahoma City police officer.
There's only one officer that I know a few years back. This is before OU was only going to 16th Street, and that he was a black cop. They used to come around here, but like I say, he got stopped by him, but he didn't question me. But he's just like, I've seen a girl that exposed her breast to him before, but as far as him threatening to arrest somebody or I've never seen that before, but.
Okay, I think that covers it. I just didn't think I was being clear on the phone when we talked.
You was being quite clear, but like I said, that's the only time that I had that happen to me when I was on the south side. And we couldn't say that I was prostituting because I wasn't. I was at the gas station.
On the
yeah,
deal.
and he exposed himself to me. It was a black officer. I guess they was doing some type of sting or whatever.
Sting, yeah, live sting.
Yeah.
This brings up two interesting points. One, Raines is now the second accuser to implicate a black Oklahoma City police officer in wrongdoing in this investigation. And two, Detective Gregory realizes what Raines is talking about. She's talking about another disgusting reality of acceptable Oklahoma City police procedure that is conveniently not discussed publicly. That officers are allowed, even encouraged, to expose themselves to women and have women get completely naked and expose themselves and even touch officers while they're working undercover, even though those women at that point haven't done anything illegal. Yet, Detective Gregory is trying to railroad Officer Holtzclaw when he simply initiates another accepted, though not discussed, police procedure, the clasp and shake. There will be more examples of Detective Rocky Gregory and Kim Davis's questionable investigative techniques in future episodes. But this is where I'm going to stop this episode. If you'd like to see 360-degree photos of where Carla Raines and Officer Daniel Holtzclaw encountered each other, along with maps, police reports, and a transcript of this episode, I encourage you to check out this episode's homepage at holtzclawtrial.com.
Okay. That was one of Bates's shorter episodes, but there was a lot of information in there, and I felt like it was very informative. I have one comment that I want to make. He says Bates said somewhere about 3/4 of the way in, possibly, that he talked about Detective Gregory's possibly being so biased that he couldn't. I can't remember his exact framing, but his exact words. But I remember when he was saying it, I was thinking, no, it's not. It's not confirmation bias, or confirmation bias to me is an excuse. I'm not saying that I don't believe confirmation bias exists, because it certainly does, but I don't think it's confirmation bias at all with Davis and Gregory. They simply wanted and needed to make Daniel a serial rapist, or assaulter, or whatever. They did it, so it wasn't about, they set out, when you set out to make somebody an abuser, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, that's not confirmation bias. That's just blatant corruption. So I have no, there's no grace for me from me with confirmation bias, or any of that stuff, because I just don't buy it with these two. Anyway, but yeah, I have a lot of other things, comments as well, but I'd like to let Kay and Susan talk about anything that they'd like to bring up or discuss.
I think it's always interesting how the common denominator when Rocky is, explaining why these women wanted to talk to him, why they're so comfortable speaking to him. And even in the depositions, it comes through. He has these little catchphrases that he uses because he's so dumb that, he needs something that is his top 5 list or whatever, but he never fails to say, I just kind of, was able to gain a rapport with the women, and, they just felt comfortable talking to me. Um, I don't know. I think his new nickname should be Rocky Rapport Gregory. He's just so transparent, though, in his lying.
In his egotistical mannerisms.
I mean, I think he thinks that whatever he says is just going to be credible to everyone because he's this seasoned now homicide detective, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, his ego is huge.
I'll say that I agree totally with Bates that this is one of the most important and telling interviews on how they went about framing Daniel. And then comparing his report writing about this interview, what he left out of it, it's very telling.
Right. And look at what they left out of the probable cause statements that they crafted. You know, in this one, it's huge. You know, she says, you know, how'd you get my name on something like this? Because I ain't really been out on the streets. You know, I've been trying to stay out of trouble. She just denies it like 7 or 8 times.
And then what does Rocky do?
Right.
He says, this is a really bad guy.
Yeah, he's a really bad guy, and he's, you know, doing different things to a bunch of women or something like that.
Yeah.
Until she can get it, you know, oh, I get it. So he's having women do different things, thinking they won't, you know, they won't get in trouble or he won't take him to jail. Yeah, you know, it's almost like Rocky should have had a gong to bang and, you know, bingo.
Yeah.
Finally got her to say it. You know, he's acting like he can't lead her. But he's already given her all the information anyway, and we have no clue what was said on the previous phone call before he shows up at her house. You know, I just didn't think you were getting what I was trying to say. Oh yeah, I get what you were saying. It's just that I ain't been out on the streets, you know. Craziness. You know, and to link. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say hi, Cherie.
Hi, Cherie.
I sent you a message in Discord. I'm really sorry I thought you were working from home on Thursdays, so I apologize if I was mistaken. We miss you. We miss having you here. But the question is, she says, I can't remember were any of the audio interviews played at trial. I think this one was, if I'm not mistaken.
I actually can't remember that either right off the top of my head.
Will when I prepare transcripts for preliminary and for the trial, yeah, jump on, Cherie. The link is in Discord. I'll know. I'll be able to tell you if the interview, if that recording was played or not. I am curious though what you guys think about the interview with Michelle Malkin, Rocky's behavior. It's hard for me to say what, you know, I can't be objective because I know he's lying, but to me it looks and sounds very much like he's lying. I like to think that if I didn't know anything about him or his role in the case, I would be able to listen and look at him and go, oh yeah, feel like he's lying. But how do you guys feel about that part of the interview with Michelle Malkin?
Yeah, well, sure. Just like he says to her that, he interviews a lot of victims, and he kind of is able to judge. I'm paraphrasing whatever he was saying, but that's the gist of what he was saying, that you know he can judge these victims' credibility because he's just had so many victims that he's dealt with over the years. Well,
Yeah,
what?
he
I
can
can
tell
judge
exactly what they're thinking, you know?
Yeah, I can judge his credibility because I've watched his bullshit over the years, and he's a liar and he's corrupt. And he fits right in to
Right.
his agency.
He's just so experienced.
Yeah, and he's so smart, right?
Yeah, and he can read their body language, and
Yeah, he can't
and
construct a sentence correctly, but he's brilliant.
Yeah.
He knows what she was thinking. He knew that. She didn't want her grandma to know.
I'm still baffled. I'm still baffled with the jurors being bamboozled by the prosecution using Daniel's own police records against him. These are legitimate calls that he made and contacts that he had, that he, as you heard in this audio, you heard Daniel calling her in, checking her for warrants, placing himself at the scene with her. You heard that. And then they take the GPS records from his onboard computer and they decide which people that he's pulled over. What they liked to do was try to get at least 2 victims that they could say, hey, he took me to the same place. He's doing these same things to a bunch of women. But it's baffling to me that the jury perceived his AVL GPS records as bombshell evidence that he committed these crimes because he was there. Yeah, of course he was there. Which kind of rapist, sexual assaulter operates in that manner, where they are just playing with fire, where they place themselves at the scene? It's just like the Sherry Ellis case when, he says out with 2 females or out with multiple subjects. Ivan Venegas is idle in the, nearby. He's bored. What does he decide to do? Cruise by to see if Daniel needs help. Wouldn't you expect that?
Tabitha Barnes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're correct. Yes, you're right. I misspoke. Exactly.
They make it sound like, at least in some of their talk about him, that he's so brazen, and I can't think of the word, where he just thinks that even if they do catch it, or they're trying to make it out that he thinks even if they did see him, he's so great he could get away with it or something like that, which is bullshit. But
that he gets a thrill from that, from the danger of that sort of thing.
Yeah, that could be. And just,
I mean,
I'm a cop, I can do what I want, and I know he's not like that. I'm just saying that's how they made him sound sometimes.
Yeah.
Kim.
That brings to mind our tour of when we were in Oklahoma City and actually going to those locations, and how narrow those little streets are and how close the houses are. And it's just, unbelievable.
Yeah,
that he
because
went
there's a house from every corner. You know, there's a
every
house on
angle.
every side. So there's a possibility of at least one person from at least 4 houses, but you know, sometimes many more would have a clear sight of
Especially
view.
that time of night in that neighborhood is when that neighborhood is alive, you know,
That's right.
with that, you know, drugs and prostitution and all of that. It's just, yeah, it blew my mind what those neighborhoods were like, where supposedly all, you know, so many of these alleged sexual assaults happened. It's just, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Do you think Scott Adams ever tried to point out or to try to explain or make it clear to them what they were doing, the reverse engineering, like to the jury, I mean?
You know, I'm trying to think of a part of the transcript where he pointed out that, you know, they used his own police records to reverse engineer a case against him. I feel like he did mention it at some point, and maybe it was during the Regina Copeland testimony, because her records didn't match her story. But I can't remember. It's just,
I feel
you
like
know, this is the problem with.
Go ahead.
I think this is the same problem the jury probably had, and the jury had it worse because, you know, they're sitting there, they're hearing this stuff one time, they're trying to process it, and the way Galen Giger questions people is very convoluted. I mean, when we're reading these trial transcripts, it's like, what? Why are you making this so confusing? And I feel like he did that by design so that the jurors would only be left with making decisions based on emotion. They wouldn't really ever have a chance to fully assimilate all of these different accusers into one story, like it's taken us years to do, studying it. I mean, it was just too much for the jury to process. I would have never been able to process it.
I know he asked, at least behind the scenes, for when they got the ABL, and I think he was probably trying to go for, oh, you already had this and you helped shape the story. But did he ever do that on the record? I don't know.
I think that was on the record the next day. I'm going to see if I can find that email real quick.
On the what was your question, Cherie?
I remember he was asking Kim and probably Rocky too, for records of when they got Joe Hill or whoever to get the ABL for him, whether, you know, trying to show that it was before at least some of the interviews. And I wondered if it was ever done in front of the jury that pointed that out at all or hinted that way.
I feel like it was done at a sidebar or in camera, but I know that did get brought up. I don't think they did. I don't think it got brought up in front of the jury. I could be wrong.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Here it is. Okay, so there is a report, OCPD report number 14-049050 parenthesis 060, provided to Scott Adams on 11/30/15 in open court. But this is just Giger's response, which is a police report that Kim Davis wrote in response to this email that Scott Adams sends. And it says, Galen, pursuant to the testimony today, I'm hereby specifically requesting the dates when any and all AVL data was run on Officer Holtzclaw's car. By that, I specifically mean, when did the Oklahoma City Police Department utilize this internal location device in State v. Holtzclaw? So there is no confusion in my request. The reason I am making it is because Detective Davis testified today that all of the 10 alleged victims that have testified to date, they were initially interviewed by either her or Detective Gregory without any AVL information. So further stated that of the 10 alleged victims that testified so far, they were able to perfectly match up where they came into contact with Officer Holtzclaw and the exact route they were taken. If transported without the benefit of the AVL. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the end of that sentence. I suck. It was consistent. It has consistently been the state's position in this case that the witness's testimony is to be believed because they did not have the assistance of any of the AVL technology when they gave statements to the Oklahoma City Police Department. I look forward to receiving this information. If you have any questions or need any additional information, please contact me. Sincerely, Scott Adams. And so Kim drafts a report, which I don't have on the tip of my... Oh, yes, I do. Never mind. Kim drafts this report in response to this, and it's given in open court the next day. I mean, just handed to Scott. I don't think it was discussed on the record. Body of the report. On 11/29/15, I was contacted by Oklahoma County Assistant DA Galen Giger. He advised the defense attorney in these cases requested the exact dates I obtained AVL in each individual case. The Janie Liggins case was a call out. I did not document the date I obtained AVL. However, since it was a call out, it wouldn't have been until after my initial response and interview with Janie. Also, I do not know who the officer was to request the AVL. In 3 of the cases, I documented the date I obtained AVL. Sherry Ellis, 8/13/14, Sarita Bowen, 10/10/14, Adara Gardner, 10/27/14. In 5 of the cases, I did not document the dates I obtained AVL, and those were Mathis, Great, Copeland, Johnson, and Lyles. Then she says, with certainty, I love this, with certainty, I did not check with Joe Hill until after I interviewed each victim because I did not have a location for him to check. Once I contacted Joe, I requested AVL, CAD calls, and radio traffic. I did not keep notes as to when I talked with Joe Hill. Obtaining AVL radio traffic, and CAD calls, took several phone calls and extended periods of time for each individual victim. My thought about that report is, instead of asking Joe Hill to run a report showing when and by whom the AVL data was accessed, Kim Davis instead just provided this manufactured report, because anyone who works with software in their job knows that all of these programs have audit logs. Joe Hill or his boss would have been able to run a report of when those records were accessed. And that's really what I think Scott was hoping to get. But, Scott's he's not a computer guy. He's kind of like Kim Davis. He's not very techy. He's not very techno. So he didn't know to ask, no, I want you to run a report from the software and give me that report. So
Kim says she didn't have the location.
Yeah.
But she did have the accuser's names.
Right. And when he pulled him over. So,
Exactly.
that's ridiculous. She's so dumb.
It is dumb. Liar.
Well, what's dumb is that she was believed. That's what's dumb and scary.
Once again, it's overload to the jury. This is overload to the jury. They can't process it. They can't come up with the question that Susan just, came up with. It's like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, Kim Davis.
And then they're scared into feeling like they have to, or else there's going to be a big riot. They have to do something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and then we're not even talking about Rocky's victims. Those were just Kim's victims. Rocky's on vacation, so it was just a half-assed kind of thing.
Something we haven't done, and I guess I need to find it, and perhaps we can read it and record it and premiere it or something, but we need to read Joe Hill's testimony about his involvement and how how he obtained the information and when. Because clearly he lied under oath, if I'm not mistaken, because I read it a long time ago. I've read it, but he just goes along with, I don't remember the exact words, but basically whenever the detective asked me for the information, I went ahead and pulled it and gave it to him. And it's just not feasible. It's just not feasible that actually happened that way. And I will tell you that when I occasionally have back and forth with others about Daniel's case, and they tell me it's just a very blanket, broad, arbitrary thing that they say, he's guilty, he's right where he belongs, he should never get out. And I'll just say, well, what, I politely ask, well, what makes you so sure he's guilty? And invariably, that most people will say to me, duh, kind of, the GPS. I'm like, GPS and DNA, they're certain that he's guilty because of the GPS and the DNA. The DNA, we can easily explain that, and we have Dr. Silkman has done that for us. The GPS, though, I just kind go back and say, well, that doesn't really make any sense. GPS says that he was there at that location, and he was performing a stop of some sort, but it doesn't say that he actually, assaulted these women. GPS cannot tell you that he did anything except for that he was at that location. And usually, unless the person just wants to argue with me, usually that just kind of shuts them up. I usually don't get a response from that, or I get something, like, oh, you're just, a racist, white, whatever, and you're just supporting a cop, a racist cop raper or whatever, whatever words they want to come up with. But it's the GPS, just the AVL GPS just cannot possibly show or prove or say what any of the individuals did during the encounters. So the fact that they relied on that so heavily, and that it was obviously it was probably, I would imagine, the most simple thing that jurors could come up with in their mind to say, well, GPS says he was there, so he must have done it. To try to parse through all of the words that are said, just putting all of that out of their mind, because they can't possibly put it in chronological orders or anything. It's just, I can imagine just saying, well, fuck it, the GPS says he was there, so he must have done it. I don't know. I mean, we don't know what, we have interviews from two of the jurors, and neither one of those were very helpful, but they were telling as far as I'm concerned, especially Daniel Speak's interview. So anyway, you guys all know, everybody knows who listens to the channel enough, or those of you who listen, who get stuck listening to my rants. The AVL is my biggest hang up with the case, besides all the lies, of course. The AVL is just my biggest hang up. I don't trust it at all. And I believe Kay has mentioned in the past that something about the time that it's pulled, or each time it's re-pulled again, the computer, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing. Maybe I'm thinking of the animated ones. But each time it's pulled, it slightly alters the... Help me, Kay. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
It's the points that it puts down, because the little dots on the map represent a time and a location. And every time you run a different report, it chooses different points. So in a few cases, and I can't recall which few cases of these 13 that Adams felt like, you just keep running this report until it looks like you want it to look. I mean, it's still the same route, but I don't know how to, I mean, it makes more sense if I could correlate this conversation with a specific accuser to show my point. But it's not that the data is different. I mean, it is different. It's choosing different points to plot on the map, but it's still using the same locator information. Does that make sense? I feel like Kim Davis. Does that make sense? You got to kind of use a little common sense here.
Got to use a little common sense. Let me, I have the AVL information from Carla Raines' case. So let me show those. And all right. Can you guys see those? Yeah. Okay, so let me see if I can.
Yeah, I mean, these are really, yeah, this is really hard to follow because you have to put them in order by the time. So it's kind of like one of those connect the dots kind of puzzles.
Right. And I've done that with a lot of them. Like, see on this one right here, for whatever reason, I didn't finish. What I did though was I basically just the actual time of the actual location of the encounter. This is for Carla Raines on the 14th of March. And I tried to do that at, basically proving that this was where the stop were. And this is from the police report. I pulled these from the police reports, and I just kind of went crazy, putting all the little dots in for each place that it picked up, that the AVL recorded his vehicle. And I didn't take anything out. I didn't cut anything out. I didn't cover anything up. I put in exactly what the police report, the AVL shows on the police report. And, this shows the exact times. And you're right, trying to figure out the time, the chronologically the time. And this was something else that I want to say. Oh God, I just sidetracked myself, but I feel like this is kind of important to say too. This is the only thing that was going on in Carla Raines' case. This is the only time. This is the 10 or so minutes, 10 or 12 minutes that Daniel allegedly assaulted her or made her show her breast, which he didn't make her do anything. But anyway, this is the only time frame here. This is shown to the jury. So if you're a juror and you're seeing this, and they don't have it like this for the jury, it's just like that one I just showed you. It's just a black and white with these, crappy typesetting. But there's all of this stuff over here that's distracting in it would be for me. With my brain, my ADD brain would not be able to focus in on just this. I would be looking at all of this too. And I think that's done purposely for that reason, to be a distraction. And that really frustrates me as well. So this is the actual picture, the satellite picture of the stop, or whatever you want to call it, of that whole thing. And you don't have all this other business over here to distract you. Right here, all you get to see, and I've plotted these points, or I didn't plot them, they were there, I just bolded them so you could see them, and put in the speeds, and how you can tell where he was stopped and for how long. And then this shows that he was going on this one, that he was going 11 knots here, and then he slowed down over here, stopped 0 knots, and then what I think is that he comes up to to Fonshell. This is Fonshell. He comes up over here, and then flips a U-turn, because then it shows you that at 11:27 he takes off at he's still at 0 speeds, but that he's going back this other direction at 11:28. He's 14. He's going back up to speed. Anyway, it really bothers me. This whole what is happening? I don't know what just happened. I don't know what that is. That wasn't what I was trying to show. Here's what I was trying to show. So here's the, I don't know, the daylight, Google, I guess it would be Google, of this stop. And each little blue spot here that has a little, it's a police car, you know, shows where Daniel was stopped based off of the AVL. Oh, I think I made this Google map. I might have made this Google map. Anyway, it's, you know, it just shows, but then when you've got them showing in trial some of these other maps that are just so, and I don't have one handy right now, but anyway, you guys, I get all sideways on the damn map thing, so AVLs. Anyway, way off track, but I just wanted to mention one other thing really quickly. She says that she was stopped for about 45 minutes. In my opinion, she's still talking about the year before when she was, you know, Bates says that, well, you know, she was wrong. You know, we could tell she was lying, or whoever was lying, because, you know, it was only about 12 minutes or so that Daniel had her stopped that night. But she said it was, you know, 40 or 45 minutes, whatever she said. I don't think she's talking about, because you got to remember, my best Kim Davis, that, she's still talking about the black cop that stopped her the year before, I believe, when she said it was her 45 minutes. Because to hear Rocky say it, she didn't admit anything about the assault until the recording was off and she pulled him aside and, can I talk to you privately? Because you look so trustworthy and you're so sweet and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, according to him, she didn't tell him any of the details until after they were supposedly alone. And I don't know, I need to just listen to the episode again, or the recording again, because I just don't feel like 45 minutes is the stop that she's talking about. I really feel like it's the stop from a year earlier when she's talking about the black officer. I don't know. I'm done with my little rant. Unorganized rant. That's funny, Kay. You have no idea what I just saw in that message. Yeah, and that's fine. I need to, you know, we could probably all be done here too. But anyway, I don't know. I'm really curious what those of you who are in the chat, or those who are going to be watching later, I'm really curious to know what you think. If you need to go back to the first one in the Carla Raines series and listen to the original interview with her and Rocky Gregory, and then come back and listen to Bates' wrap up, you know, might be more helpful to you. But I don't know. I just see like there's a lot of overt lies, and mostly, honestly, from Rocky Gregory. And then his shady responses with the Michelle Malkin interview are just, I don't know. Maybe I'll put together a video with the recorded interview, and then the wrap-up interview, or the wrap-up recording, and then the Michelle Malkin thing. I'll stick it all in one video or something, just so you can. But the next thing we're going to do is the preliminary. So we're going to see if there's any crazy changes or any crazy lies that come up just in the preliminary hearing, and see how that goes, because that's what we like to do. Play what evidence has been provided, and then read the transcripts, and you know, kind of make our own opinions or judgment calls or whatever you want to do from there. So anyway, but thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. Sorry about the early start time. I need to figure out I don't know if it comes down to changing the day or what, but just things are just chaotic, and so I don't know if, if I need to change the day altogether or what. But at any rate, I'm thinking I'll probably be closer to this same time next week when we do the reading of the preliminary hearing. So any final
With the,
comments
with the
from
magic of
now?
YouTube, Rhonda, I don't think the time is all that important. People can rewatch.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep. Okay. Any final comments from anybody on the panel? Okay.
I think I'm
That
good.
as a no.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute, but I don't have anything further.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I will. We'll see you next week when we start reading the transcripts. And until then, peace out.